Welcome to Plot Twist Radio, the show where creativity, storytelling, and the unpredictable path of the creative life all collide. I'm your host, Erin. Welcome back to Plot Twist Radio, where life's unexpected turns become the best stories. Today's guest is the definition of fearless reinvention. Michelle Jensen started her career in television post-production, transitioned into marketing, became a travel blogger, and during the lockdown, wrote an action-adventure novel inspired by Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider. She's climbed temples, swam with sharks in Belize, explored Mayan ruins, navigated solo travel across Europe, and managed to build a profitable blog. In this episode, we talk about the reality of the publishing process and why it's not for the faint of heart, how travel influences storytelling, the difference between blogging and writing fiction, solo travel confidence, reinventing yourself after walking away from a 14-year career, and the moment COVID became her unexpected plot twist. If you've ever pivoted, doubted yourself, chased a creative dream, or wanted to book a one-way ticket somewhere new, this conversation is for you. Michelle, thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm originally from New York. When I was 18, I moved out to California to work into entertainment, and I did that for about 14 years, worked mostly in post-production for TV. And then I kind of, during that time, I also had an app company. And then I moved into marketing, and then I actually moved into travel blogging. But in between all of that, during COVID, I actually wrote a book. So to say I'm a little bit multitasker or diverse in my skill set is, I think, a little bit of an understatement.
You caught my attention, especially because you started as a blogger and then switched over to author, because that's exactly what I did. And I just kind of felt this like camaraderie. So I have to ask about traveling, because I noticed that you've been to so many locations. Is there a specific place that you just loved and could go back over and over again, like your dream location?
That's a good question. I spent 4.5 months in Europe last year, which was amazing. And I'd say my two favorite places are Belfast and Budapest, and kind of for similar reasons. They have like a really good community there of locals and also like people who are also traveling around there. There's tons of stuff to do, um, great food. But of the places that I would, like, go back and I would go back to those, but I would also say Belize. I think Belize is kind of, like, a little underrated. Everybody thinks, like, Central America, they're like, "Oh, yeah, we've heard of, like, Guatemala, we've heard of, Costa Rica and stuff like that," and, like, maybe you've heard of Belize, but I feel like I don't know many people have gone, and they boast the second largest barrier reef in the world after Australia's.
Wow.
So when I went, I got to swim with sharks, stingrays, all kinds of fish. I mean, like depending on what Disney generation you are, you either felt like the Little Mermaid or Nemo.
I love that. I love that. I'm a Disney nerd, so yes, you're speaking my language. Belize, you know what? That is one place I've never even actually considered, but you're right. I mean, that I've seen pictures of it, and I didn't know about the reef. I've never been to anywhere other than the United States and Canada, so I need to expand my horizons a little bit there.
You need to get going. I'm not sure where you're based, but for me, it was like only about like 3 hours south of California, so it wasn't like a terrible flight. And also, if you go inland, there's also Maya ruins, so you can go to like the beach and do like the fun oceany stuff, but then you can go inland and like pretend you're Tomb Raider, Indiana Jones, climbing these temples. Which a lot of them they still let you climb. I know there's some of them that they don't, obviously for preservation reasons and whatnot. But there was several of them that they were like, yeah, you could just go up there, and I was like, oh, okay.
I'm gonna have to put that on my list. My daughter, now that she's of age, she's gonna be my travel buddy, because my husband's like, I'm not going. We'll have to document our travels. But as far as your book goes, how did your real world travel experiences influence maybe your locations, artifacts, or even your sense of danger with the book?
That's a good question. I never thought about it in that way, but it is. So when I started writing, it was right before COVID. A friend of mine, I was like, "Hey, I really love Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider, but like I couldn't find any like books like it. Like everything I kept finding that was like an adventure story was kind of like an Outlander, where it's like 95% romance, 5% adventure, and that's not what I wanted. I wanted to read like Jumanji, kind of basically." And a friend of mine was like, "Oh, why don't you try to write it?" And I was like, yeah, when I got all this time. And then COVID happened, and I was like, "Oh, damn, now I got all this time." So I tried it, but a lot of the locations that are in it, because I did very much kinda like Da Vinci Code style where, like, Dan Brown takes a lot of real places, real people, real kind of like mythology, and then weaves them into his own narrative, and I did very much the same thing where there's, like, real temples that I mention in there, or real Mayan mythology, or real, people from history I mention, and but because it was COVID, like, I had to, like, rely on, like, all my travel planning skills to, like, figure it out because I couldn't go there, you know? Like, I couldn't go be like, "I'm gonna go fly down to this temple and be like, explore it before writing about it." I just had to, like, sit on Google Maps, like, looking at, like, pictures of like, maps of like, that they give you when you, like, enter the complex, you know, like, "This is this building over here." So it's more like, I guess, my travel planning stuff that, like, helped me just because I had no other option at that point.
Right. Yeah, we were in lockdown. I do remember that, and I think I remember because my kids, had to do the digital thing, so we did, like, digital field trips like that too, so it's a good way to
I did
learn.
some of those as well, yeah,
Yeah,
it was an interesting time.
yeah. The real travel is a little bit better, I would think.
Yeah, I have seen one of the temples I wrote about. The other one, unfortunately, it's like a 5-day hike into the jungle or a helicopter ride, and I was like, "Okay, I will reserve that for, like, a little bit later." But one of I've been to since, and I was, like, totally, like, gaga over it. Like, it was I was like, "I know where that is," and my tour guide was like, "You're really knowledgeable about this," and I was like, "Well, I've read all about it."
It's good to be knowledgeable before you go, I would think. I'm one of those, I'm a researcher, I just love it, and the rest of my family can't stand it. They're just like, "Would you just shut up and let us, explore?" So, as far as writing goes, do you feel like your journey into fiction is harder than your blogging?
Yeah, because, like, writing a book, it took a lot longer. Like, my first draft took 7 months. Like, I can write a blog post in a day if I want to, you know? So there's, like, the time investment, um, but also, like, blogging, like, there's no barrier for you. Like, there's the barrier now you have to, like, know what you're doing a little bit in order to get on Google, but, like, if your journey is just to blog, you can put it up there and, like, maybe nobody will see it because you don't know SEO, but, like, you could still do it. A novel, like, unless you're gonna self-publish, which is, like, a process too, or, like, try to query, either one's, like, a process where, like, there is either, like, monetary or, like, other people who are, like, gatekeepers. So
Right.
I feel like that's, like, the bigger problem I've faced in, like, trying to get this novel published because 'cause I've been querying it for a while, is that I, like, have to have the faith in other people to be like, they see what I see.
Yes. Every author I've ever talked to, including myself, that is the hardest process to me is the query process because, the agents, there's only so many of them and they only want certain things, but they get hundreds a day. So you're afraid you get lost in the weeds. What do you wish more people understood about the author's journey, especially in this phase, the querying phase?
But it takes forever. I mean, I've been querying for at least 2 years. It's definitely over 2 years now that I'm, like, thinking back to it, but, and I've had some agents be interested, and then usually, like, you'll never hear from them again, or, like, they'll politely say no, which is, like, to your point, like, they have a list of what they want, and they can only take so many people. Especially with AI now, like, I've been hearing, like, a lot of, like, horror stories of people are just, like, creating these AI novels and submitting them. So it's not even like you're going up against people who also have, like, an original idea. You're going up against people who are just, like, putting it in, like, ChatGPT. And I know, like, there's, like, a whole that's a whole can of worms, so we won't even go towards that bit. But yeah, I had one agent who I, like, queried, like, the week she opened, the week that she became an agent, and she, finally got back to me after 2 years late last year, and was like, "Hey, I'm reopening in January if you wanna resubmit. I liked your first 50 pages." So I've just done that last week, and now I'm, like, sitting here on the edge of my seat again. And I feel like I'm restarting the whole querying process, even though I never officially stopped, but I definitely, like, kinda, like, exhausted my resources on it of sending it to people. But, yeah, I would just say, like, know that, like, it's not you, it's a lot of factors that, like, you can't control.
Yes, it's a hard process, and I know so many people take it personally. Of course they do. Your work is a piece of you, so it's so hard. But how do you keep going forward? How do you keep, like, motivated? That, to me, was the hardest part. I actually put it away for a few years before I decided to go back to it. So how do you keep motivated?
So I did something that, like, I don't know good or bad ways about this, but I started like an Instagram account and a TikTok account, but more the Instagram account I feel like is where my community is. While I was still writing it, like while I was editing it, and I would post updates like, "Hey, I'm doing this edit," or "Hey, I'm doing beta readers," and I would like actually found some beta readers from there, and sensitivity readers, and I feel like I have like a duty to do this for them now, get them through this. Um, and a lot of them, like, a lot of the beta readers really enjoyed it, you know, like, they had notes, but, like, overall, like, they sounded like they enjoyed it. So, yeah, it's at this point, it's kinda like between them and I also paid for an editor that I did not really enjoy. So I
Mhm.
kinda wanna make sure I get that out there and, like, redeem what I spent on that. But, yeah, between them keeping them posted, though I had to stop posting, like, when I would get queried no's because it was just, like, so depressing at some point. You know, at first you're like, "Oh, 1 rejection is nothing," and then you're like, 20 rejections is nothing, and then you get to a certain number, and you're like, "I don't wanna talk about this anymore." Like,
I know exactly what you mean. That's why I started
uh,
random publishing. I was like, "I can't do it anymore. It's just too
yeah,
much."
which
So, yeah.
commend you so much for doing that because I don't that's a whole 'nother challenge in itself.
It is, and I didn't really realize what I was getting into. As far as your blog goes, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. It's called Travel Her Story. So I basically, I love history, but I wanted it to be about my travel. So hence her story. And it's a lot of solo and budget travel. I originally started it back when I was like my early 20s. I was working a job in TV that basically, unless something broke, I really didn't have much to do. And I had finished school by that point. So I just didn't have anything like to do in my spare time while I was just sitting around. And a friend from high school was like, "I want to try this blogging thing." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I guess I'll give that a shot." And at first I was very, if you were like on the blogging sphere in like 2013, like, you know that it was just like a mishmash of like whatever. It was like, here's my sangria recipe, or here's my outfit of the day. Here's the vacation I went on last week. But you would never like name it like 3 days in Paris. You'd name it like day 4 of my road trip, and it's like, who's Googling that, you know? So I did that for a little while, and then actually that spun off into the app, and I had that for 3 years, and that was a pop culture event calendar, so everything from, like, Comic-Con to, like, local trivia nights, and once that closed, I was like, "Okay, let me go back to this blogging thing and, like, really just do the travel side of it." 'Cause by then the blogging had kind of, like, narrowed down where you couldn't have, like, just random whatever you wanted on anymore. I did it before COVID, and then again, COVID hit, and nobody was going anywhere, so I was like, "I'll just shelve this," and that's when I worked on the book. And then, I left a job that wasn't very good for my mental health and did some networking thing, and some guy was like, "Well, you know, your travel blog, why don't you go make some money on that?" And I was like, "Well,
Mhm.
I never really knew what I was doing, and da, da, da." And he's like, "Oh, just give it a shot." And I was like, "Well, I'm unemployed. Like, what else am I doing right now?" So started back up the travel blog and then started making like a couple grand a month. So I was just like, okay, I guess I'll just shut up and stop complaining about not knowing what I'm doing. And I did learn more in that time. So I will give myself props for that. Like, I learned a lot about SEO. I learned a lot about how to build a WordPress blog, things like that. But yeah, I never expected to be like making good money, and then I've actually worked at AAA because of that blog. So
Oh,
yeah,
there you go. I think SEO is the hardest thing. I cannot figure that out to save my life. I commend you because that is one thing I cannot do. Every time I think I have it down, I'm going the opposite direction. So how did you discover the right way to do it?
there's a woman called Nina Clapperton. She knows SEO as her website, and I watched a ton of her videos. And she's not the only one I learned from, but she was, like, definitely the first one that I felt like I was like, "Okay, now I'm, like, kind of getting a foothold in what SEO is." Because I used to just think, like, "You just put the thing in the title and you move on."
Right.
And I was just like, "That's not it," you know? So I watched a ton of her content. She has a Facebook group as well, and then I've also, just started up a course from Bucket List Bree. Yeah, Bucket List Bree is what her name is. I can't say how well that's working yet just because SEO takes time. Anybody who doesn't know what SEO is search engine optimization. So it's basically telling Google, this is what this thing is. Please serve it to the right people. Whether that's a itinerary for, 3 days in Belize or, a travel packing list, whatever it is. Uh, but yeah, so Nina, and then, like I said, bucket list Brie, and then I've taken like random, just random articles and like seeing what other people are doing. For me, it's kinda like blogging is like kind of being on like the stock market. Like you're gonna move every day. Your rankings are gonna move constantly. You just hope for a good day. Yeah, people are like, "Oh, well, if you get on number 1 on Google, you just stay there." And I'm like, "Nope."
No.
I was like, "I've had stuff stay there for like a year or 2, but like at some point you're gonna like fall off the top of the thing." So that's why I think the stock market analogy is like much better because
Yes,
it's gonna go up and down.
exactly. That's a perfect one, yeah.
Yeah, but I enjoy it. I have had people tell me it helped them. Um, at the end of the day, yeah, it's nice also making money, but I also like versus like novel writing, it's a little bit more instant gratification because, like I said, you can publish something like in a day if you wanted to. I know some people take longer, but you can if you want to in a day. It does take some time for SEO to sometimes pick it up, but like, there is some kind of like I feel you could be like, "Hey, mom, I have this," because you have something you can make in a day versus like a novel where you're like, "Oh, well, it's in the process. I'm working on it."
Yes. It's never-ending process, it feels like at
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, so
Oh, your travel, do you do it, like, solo travel? Because I do a lot of solo travel, and I love blogs that kinda focus on the solo traveler because, like I said, my family doesn't usually travel with me, so do you usually travel by yourself?
yeah, and a lot of my guides are about solo travel, and for that reason, because 'cause I'll see, like, what to do, in this city with kids, which is fine, but that's not my I don't have kids, so it doesn't apply to me. So, yeah, most of them my 4.5 months I spent in Europe last year was mostly solo. I've yet to write on that because I'm so far behind, but I promise I will. But I have, like, destinations like Barcelona or Dublin that I've been to solo, um, and I love kinda, like reassuring people that, like, it's not so scary, Like, there's only been, like, a couple places that I was like, I don't know if I'd come back here solo." But most places are very welcoming and usually are, like actually, like, will be like, "Oh, that's great that you're doing this," So, I think more people should be less afraid of going solo. And if you are, let's start with like the next town over, like test it out, like you don't need to like fly to like Budapest by yourself to like
Mm.
test it out. Yeah. You can start with like, I'm going to go the next town over or the next state over or like whatever is like convenient for you to be like, hey, can I sit in a restaurant by myself and like not feel like super awkward about this?
That was a big thing for me first started because I'm known for my ghost hunting, and a lot of times I would be by myself, and at first I felt you get this irrational fear that everybody knows you're by yourself and whatever. It's just a weird thing. But as time went on, I realized how much fun it could be because you get to do exactly what you want to do. You get to explore. Your blog is fantastic, by the way. Everyone, please go.
Yeah.
So we're gonna move on to the plot twist moment because this is plot twist radio. If you had to pinpoint one moment where everything changed for you, not went viral, not exploded, but just truly shifted your life, what would that be?
As far as like writing the book or the blog or in general.
Just in general.
Oh, I feel like there was a big moment of me leaving television because I had done that for 14 years, and I left that and actually went straight to, like, Italy and then Thailand,
Wow.
and I think I didn't feel my emotions until I got home and then realized I was, like, leaving TV, but I feel like moving on from something I had done for so long and I started when I was interning when I was 18 years old. Oh, I was there for 2 years and that was it. That was kinda like a big moment in my life that I felt like turned a real big corner because it's something I had dug into and given my 20s to and given my late teen years to, and I was, like, driving to LA all the time and doing crazy hours and, like, committing myself to it and then realized it wasn't I wasn't enjoying it, but it also wasn't helping me. So I wound up losing actually 75 pounds during COVID because I wasn't married to a desk, uh, 12 hours a day and sitting in 2 hours of traffic, and then, that's, like, 14 hours right there, and then you're supposed to sleep for 8, so then you're up to what, 22 already, and heaven forbid I wanted to make food or work out or do laundry. Rest of your
Right.
2 hours is gone, So yeah, I feel like that COVID time and then like words where I just kind of like started making decisions based on that time was the biggest turn.
Yep, that makes sense. So one last question. What's one destination you haven't explored yet that you would really want to?
I would like to go to Japan and also Cambodia. And like the futuristic old meets old world just seems really alluring to me. I was actually gonna go last year, but then I realized it was the start of their rainy season. I was like, yeah, maybe I can go like a better time when it's not raining all the time. And then Cambodia, I'd love to go see Angkor Wat. I'd love to, like pretend to be Angelina Jolie for a little bit and just wander around this road. I did a cave in Belize that very much made me feel like Indiana Jones, and I quickly realized I am not Indiana Jones because I got scared, in the cave. But you know what? It's nice to pretend for a hot minute.
Oh yeah, that's exactly why I write fantasy, so I can pretend because I would not in
Right?
real life.
Yeah, yeah. I did this cave, and so it's a cave where there's supposedly sacrificed Maya people in there to the gods. And you first go in, you're like going through the water, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, this is cool. I'm in the front because I'm solo. Um, and I usually try to stay near a guide so that I don't, get left behind because nobody's gonna be ever gonna be watching me. And he was like, "Oh, have you been in this cave before? You seem like you know where you're going." And, da, da, da. And I was like, "No, man." And I was just like, "I'm Indiana Jones." And then they're like, "Oh, now you have to climb up." I climb. And they're like, "Yeah, you'll do it. It's fine." And I did it, but my heart was, I have a graph from my Fitbit tracker that's just like slowly goes up until we start going back down and that starts relaxing a little bit.
That would be me. That's so cool that you get to climb those, that you get to explore, that they let you explore. I've always wanted to see those. I want to go to Egypt. I want to check out those. I know you can't climb those, but just the history there because I just love it. I just love the world's history. So that is so cool that you got to experience some of that.
Yeah, yeah. I think you and your daughter should go. It was a lot of fun. I unfortunately was solo because my cousin got injured before we went to the cave. But yeah, the cave is, I don't know if I'd do it again because I was scared, but I'm glad I did. And since I felt like I could do anything, I conquered that now. When you're in a cave, you start thinking about all the movies you've seen where the cave has collapsed and they're stuck in the cave.
Yeah. So yeah,
Is this a good
exactly.
idea?
I think I live in Chicago, but in southern Indiana, there's a bunch of caves, and I went in one once, and I just literally just walked right into it. I was like, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm leaving. And I didn't even know I was claustrophobic until that moment.
Yeah, you start learning things about yourself when you put yourself in unusual situations.
Yes, absolutely. So you told us about where your blog is. Where else can the listeners find you?
Well, if they go there, there's a newsletter sign up on my homepage for the book when I get more news. But I do also have a social media for the book. It's called Michelle Writes a Novel. Yeah, Michelle Writes a Novel. I'm trying to remember if it was Michelle Wrote a Novel. But I think it's Michelle Writes a Novel. Again, I haven't updated in a hot minute. So if you're not seeing anything on there, that's what it is. But I will update on there when I have news. And then Travel Her Story almost on all social medias except for TikTok. Somebody had taken it, so it's Travel Her Story blog. But yeah, feel free to reach out anywhere on there if you got questions about travel or want to talk about action adventure novels or whatever it is.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Michelle. This has been an awesome conversation. I appreciate you joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Erin.
What I loved about this conversation with Michelle is that her plot twist wasn't a viral moment or overnight success. It was a quiet, internal shift. Walking away from a 14-year career, choosing mental health, betting on herself, writing the book she couldn't find on the shelves. That's the kind of courage we don't always see, but it's often the most powerful. You can find Michelle at travelherstory.com. That's her story because we love a good play on words, where she shares solo and budget travel guides. You can also follow her journey toward publication on Instagram at Michelle Writes a Novel, and of course, across social media at Travel Her Story. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs a reminder that reinvention is always possible. Until next time, keep chasing the story you were meant to live.